Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time I want to talk about what Zelda game we could get for 2022. Because, as many of you may already know, the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, which was slated for this year, has officially been delayed to spring 2023. And the thing is, we know that Nintendo has tried to have some sort of relatively major Zelda release every single year. So then, with Breath of the Wild 2 not coming out this year, what could be coming out this year for the annual Zelda release? Let's talk about it. Now before we jump into things, let me first very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe or perhaps even consider joining as a member. So before we talk about the possibilities of Zelda releases for this year, we should probably talk about if there could even be another Zelda release for this year, because Breath of the Wild 2 is due out spring 2023, and when looking at different games that Nintendo has had slated for spring, they typically come out in March. Monster Hunter Rise, Animal Crossing, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and basically we tend to see Nintendo put out a major release in March right before the end of the fiscal year, and Breath of the Wild 2 is perfectly suiting for that kind of game. Heck, in 2017, in March, the Nintendo Switch and the initial Breath of the Wild came out then. So there's a good chance this spring 2023 release timing is for then, in March. And if it's in March, that's not too much later after 2022. So the gap between now and then is less than a year actually, assuming that timing holds true. It could be later, it could even be delayed again. We don't know that for sure, but assuming there aren't any more delays, then we're really not that far off. So then, is there a need for there to be a Zelda this year to hold us over until just a few months into the beginning of next year? Again, assuming it's not delayed again. We'll see. And I think that's up for debate, whether there's a need for another Zelda. I mean, actually, I would say there isn't a need. There are so many games coming out this year, and there's probably a few more that are going to be announced at E3. We don't need Zelda this year to sort of hold us over in terms of games. But for the Zelda fan base, to keep the Zelda fan base satisfied, perhaps Nintendo and the Zelda team will want something out there. That's a possibility. If you look at every year on Switch, there's been something Zelda. 2017, Breath of the Wild. 2018, Hyrule Warriors. 2019, Link's Awakening Remake. 2020, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. 2021, Skyward Sword HD. So what about 2022? Well, there has been the long-rumored Twilight Princess and Windwaker HD ports. And if I remember correctly, we were hearing rumors about these games back in 2020, or at least a lot of speculation for the Zelda 35th anniversary, which amounted to nothing. But there were people saying that for sure these games were going to be coming out. They didn't come out for the 35th anniversary, and here we are in 2022, and there's still no major Zelda release. So could these games come out then? Well, the thing is, last year for Skyward Sword HD, that was announced in an earlier Nintendo Direct. This time around, there was no earlier Zelda announcement in a Nintendo Direct. Could they announce these games at E3? Maybe. But I don't see these being the kind of games that would come out during the holidays like October or November. They are ports of ports, basically, or ports of remasters. So there's a bit of a, there's a lesser significance here is the point I'm trying to make here. I feel like these would be the kind of games that would have to come out during the summer, like Skyward Sword HD, not in November as the big major release for the year. So there's definitely a difference there. But at the same time, because they are ports of remasters or what have you, I could see Nintendo announcing them at E3 and they come out just a month or two later into the summer, and there we go. People finally get their Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. I've talked about how if there is no major Zelda release for this year, Breath of the Wild 2, Nintendo likely has been saving Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD for that rainy day. This could be this rainy day. However, given how many games are coming out this year, given that Breath of the Wild 2 may only be delayed until March, there still may not be a huge need there. So I'm not 100% committed to the idea that we will be getting these games this year, but with Breath of the Wild 2 now delayed, the chances for these ports are greater than ever. So maybe within the next 3 months, most likely at E3 but potentially beforehand, we get an announcement for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD coming to the Switch sometime late summer or early fall. That's a possibility. I don't see them coming out much later than that because 1, I don't think they warrant a big holiday release, but also 2, there's gotta be some space between these games, which will take a while to play and finish, and Breath of the Wild 2. So I'm assuming about half a year. But what if it isn't that? And it is something. What else could there be? I don't think we're going to see a brand new 2D Zelda release this year with Breath of the Wild 2 just around the corner. So I don't think it'd be something too major. But maybe it could be something on the smaller end of things. Maybe like a Four Swords Adventures, for example, like a multiplayer 2D Zelda. That would be pretty cool, and it wouldn't be like a whole other adventure, but it'd be more of like a side game. Maybe it's only an eShop release. That could be something Nintendo could potentially squeeze in, which would be pretty nice to see. That's a possibility besides Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. Beyond that, I can't really think of much. The only other thing that I would consider, and this is like a very sort of left field, unlikely scenario, but maybe, is that maybe Nintendo goes back to Breath of the Wild and releases some sort of DLC adventure, perhaps linking Breath of the Wild 1 and 2 a little bit more, and it's something that's free on the Nintendo Online expansion pack, and it's just something that kind of tide us over, throw us a bone, and it kind of excites us fans, and it's a little bit of a holdover until Breath of the Wild 2. Maybe it's not even like a paid thing through the expansion pack, maybe it's just like a free update, a little something there, just like a little bit of an extra adventure. Maybe they could do something like that, but I think that's pretty unlikely. Breath of the Wild's been out for a while, Breath of the Wild 2 is around the corner, why even bother? But hey, maybe, if they're willing to put out the Booster Course Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, a remastered port of a game that came out in 2017 with the original coming out in 2014, maybe they could do something for Breath of the Wild as well. Maybe. But again, I don't think it's really likely. I think the most likely scenarios here are either A, we get nothing, or B, we get Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. But what do you guys think? What sort of Zelda release do you think we could have for this year? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.